Well, howdy. Let me tell you just a little story. When I was a teenager, um, even when I was younger, I mean, I live in New Brunswick, which is a province here in Atlantic Canada, and to get to the island of Prince Edward, so Prince Edward Island, the only way you could do that was by taking a ferry, uh, going to this little place and then getting on a boat and going across. It's pretty exciting. And then at some point, I don't know, I think I was around 13, somewhere in that age bracket, they built this giant bridge. And so when people wanted to go across and see Anne of Green Gables, they were able to do that by driving their car. It's insane. It was an enormous project. It's called the Confederation Bridge because Confederation union of our provinces into one giant country that is Canada happened in Prince Edward Island. So like, hey, that's a good name for it. Before they opened this bridge to traffic, there was this event that they actually allowed people to run across and also bike across. And so I remember the opportunity to do that, and it was like so cool to be able to kind of bike across this giant. I don't even know how long it is. I think it's 13 kilometers, something like that. It's long. It's long. It's a long bridge. One of the longest ones in the world. Just a cool opportunity. So, since then I've driven across it dozens of times, and I always think about that time and that opportunity that we had to do that. It's actually funny. My wife just sent me a link the other day that I think it's coming up this summer soon, at the very least, the Terry Fox run is actually going to be shutting down the bridge so that they can do a run across it. And I don't know, but I think it might be the first time since that happened. Been a long time they've allowed. There's no pedestrians allowed on the bridge, it's only driving. So if you happen to be a walker, they have a bus for you. Anyway, the point is, it was a really cool memory that I began to doubt a few weeks ago. I was listening to this episode of a podcast that I listened to. It's a limited run podcast, kind of. It's called The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, which is about the so-called Satanic Panic and the scares that happened in kind of North America in the kind of 1980s, 1990s. Things that I lived through, things that I remember. People being afraid about the impact of Dungeons and Dragons um, on kind of the youth, and then also just like people like being afraid to let their kids go across the street because there were Satan worshipers everywhere. So this podcast, I think it was episode 7 of this podcast. They start to delve into this phenomenon of like some of the faulty things that happened when they interviewed people to try to get people who claimed there's some satanic abuse in their life, and they interviewed them. And when they looked at the records of these interviews later on, because I mean, the kind of the crux of this podcast overall is they're saying that there was, I can't remember whether it was hundreds or thousands, a ton of investigations during this era into kind of ritualized satanic abuse, and absolutely no convictions. And so when they started looking back at some of the interviews of people, they started noticing that the way that people were being interviewed was very leading. Like people were kind of inputting things into the conversation that helped them say, yeah, I think I remember that, et cetera, et cetera. And then they also kind of opened up the idea of what happens when, whether it's through therapy or counseling or just kind of through conversation, people can kind of input memory into your memory. So an example being something along the lines of like, if you've seen, I've talked to my kids about this, they see pictures of things that happened when they were 2 or 3 years old. And then we tell them stories about those things. And then through kind of repeated conversation, they develop into something they experience as a memory. But it's not a lived memory. It's like an imported one. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that t-shirt. It's like, but you don't really remember it in real time. You remember the picture of it, and you can kind of imagine it, and then that imagination becomes something that becomes kind of entrenched through talking about it, and then it becomes a memory for you, a real lived memory, but actually an imported memory. So I'm sitting there, no, I'm standing there washing the dishes. I remember over in my kitchen washing the dishes. And as they're describing this, I don't know why, but all of a sudden I said, did I actually cross the Confederation Bridge on a bike? Because though I have told dozens, if not hundreds of people about it, I don't have any direct memory of it. Now, my wife would say that that's not uncommon for me because I forget a lot of things. And I don't have a ton of direct memories of a lot of things that happened in my youth, but I thought that was such an epic thing. I'd have something. And so I asked my parents, hey, did I cross the Confederation Bridge on my bike when I was a teenager? And they said, we don't have any memory of that. Again, that's not necessarily uncommon. So then I reached out to my youth pastor, a guy that I used to spend a lot of time with when I was a teenager, a man by the name of Joel Whittish. And I said, hey, super random question, but do you know if we participated in that? Because I was pretty sure it would have been as a group, like I wasn't in scouts or any kind of biking troop, whatever. So it seemed likely that if I was going to be doing it, it would have been in some way connected through my church. And so when I asked him that, he said, no. He said, I registered for that. In other words, he's saying that Joel, he registered for that, but was unable to make it because of a health concern. And he said, however, we did bike to the ferry when you were younger. So a bunch of teenagers actually took a ferry. So we biked on the highway. Ambulance in the background there. We took a ferry, or rather, we biked down on the highway towards where the ferry would actually go across to the island. He said you took the ferry across, and then he said, I remember all of us having like hamburgers and French fries on the boat. And as soon as he said that detail, I went, oh my goodness, I remember that. And I kind of faintly remember the biking along the road. He talked about somebody who was with us who wouldn't shut up the whole time because they were kind of chittering and chattering. It wasn't me. And then all of a sudden I was like, that's what I did. I biked to the ferry before the bridge was even there and then went across. I never biked across on the bridge, but for the last 30 years of my life, or somewhere along the way, I had developed a memory where that trip to the ferry conflated with conversations about people biking across, and it became a pseudo memory. And this kind of rocked my world. Not in a way that I all of a sudden doubt all my memories, although it certainly brings some things to bear, but this coupled with the idea that memories of who we are and what we've done, as we tell those memories, whether we tell them out loud or just kind of recycle them to ourselves, they help define for us the kind of person we are. So if you feel like you're the kind of person who could have biked across the Confederation Bridge, then you feel like when something like that is presented to you, whether it's a difficult task, you're more inclined to be like, well, I'm the kind of person who can do that. Sure, I've done it in the past. Why not do it again, right? Like, so the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of, which are often rooted and anchored in our experiences, apparently whether they are real experiences or imagined experiences, really help kind of dictate and shape what we're able to do in the world. So I don't have a significant takeaway other than like, it's been cathartic for me a little bit to experience and to unpack this and to know your memories are a little bit malleable. And so anyway, that's really, there's no significant takeaway for you. Maybe there is, I don't know, you can let me know. But for me, this was such a big thing for me to unpack that I wanted to be. So I'll actually, depending upon how you're engaging with this, I'll make sure that the links to some of these, particularly the episode I'm talking about from The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea is linked. And then also I think I'll maybe link the upcoming Terry Fox run across the bridge. I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but maybe you can become somebody who has run across the Confederation Bridge and your reality can match my distorted memory.